Hey everyone, back again doing another first impression. This video is going to be about Roman Props's Luke V4 balance. This is going to be on his second run that he did of this hilt. I also have the first run of that hilt here that I'm going to use as a comparison. And if you're looking for the full first impression review of Roman's first generation run for this, look back to some of my videos from about a couple months ago. I did a top to bottom first impression review of this. Really enjoy this hilt. It is it's a good idealized version for The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. If you remember, Roman started putting this project together before The Last Jedi came out, and the basis that he was going off of was the behind the scenes photo from The Force Awakens. So there's really only that one reference shot that Roman took to get the basis of this hilt. So where, the only big things that we really knew about were the balance pipe itself has all the holes on top of the emitter. Mostly everything else he pretty much defaulted back to Return of the Jedi, and then when he saw The Last Jedi, right before some of the parts were being made, I think actually it was where the D-ring, the tri-ring was being drilled. It wasn't in the normal spot where, if you know the hero, it's the tri-ring is in line with the control box. This is actually 90 degrees just about to the left, and he saw that change and quickly got that fixed before they started to drill for the tri-ring. And after these had sold out at some point in time, either late last year or early this year, and he started doing a second run. Now the second run, he made some improvements, which I really want to go over, and that I actually think really enhance this hilt. When I first sought out getting a Luke hilt for the new trilogy, no one had really, to my knowledge, there was really no one that had done an FX. I think there were some statics that were being done from The Force Awakens, that behind the scenes shot, but Roman was the first one that I recognized doing an FX hilt one, and I thought he did a pretty remarkable job. His quality definitely speaks for itself. He has a great reputation for detail and accuracy. He did, I think, for just basically seeing one photo and making an idealized hilt, I thought it was a pretty good job. Again, it's very heavily based on Return of the Jedi, just with a couple of tweaks. And the differences that came along for the second generation, I actually really enjoyed. So I'm going to go through that. The first thing I'm going to tell you, that one of the reasons why I ended up getting this, is the emitter itself is now a true dedicated emitter to The Last Jedi and Force Awakens. So the balance pipe here actually has the hole pieces as a permanent fixture to the emitter itself. And as you can see, there's the internal the built-in heatsink there, and then here, of course, is the blade plug. Now the blade plug I'm going to show you is slightly different than what we have here in the first gen. So here's his first run. Now again, this comes out completely, alright? And so here you have very reminiscent of the Luke Return of the Jedi, where it is very flat. And one of the accessories that comes along with it actually is the Return of the Jedi blade plug. So when that comes in, if you threw that in there, it basically looks like Luke's from Return of the Jedi. Which again, to me, makes this a very versatile hilt. And to make that interchangeable, I think that's a great quality, especially if someone is out there that's looking to just have one Luke hilt to maybe switch things around, especially because the Luke hero from Return of the Jedi and the Luke hilt from the Force Awakens and The Last Jedi are very similar. Roman actually did do a nice job of making it easily switchable just from that little blade plug there. But when I wanted to get one of these hilts, I already have a couple of the Return of the Jedi styled hilts anyway, and those are pretty much dedicated for Return of the Jedi. I wanted something that was really dedicated towards this trilogy. As I've said before, that Luke's hero hilt is my all-time favorite of all the canon lightsaber hilts in the films, followed by a close second by Luke's V2. I mean, if I had to rank them, it's probably more like 1A and 1B. But I wanted something that was really dedicated and just had the look and the feel of the current trilogy. So when he went back and made some adjustments, to me, that made all the difference in the world. Especially once the Blu-ray came out, Roman, I think, was able to go back and check out some of those high resolution shots and really did some nice changes on this. So not only did he end up changing the blade plug again, or the emitter itself, to make this permanent, but the emitter itself is now longer. I'll try and get a nice close-up here, and as you can see, so again, this is the Gen 1 right here. As you can see, it's a much more shallow emitter. This one is a little bit deeper on the Gen 2. And as you can see, the blade retention screw is in a different spot. Okay, so the first run has this right here, right in like the body of the emitter. I'll admit, this was one of the things that I did not like on that first Gen run, is the placement of this. I don't mind that it's a really small retention screw. I actually kind of like that, because the smaller the hole, the less noticeable it is. But to me, this is where it should be, right up in that upper lip of the emitter. I really think that's the best spot. I mean, just about every other Luke hero hilt that I've seen and had myself, that's pretty much where the retention screw is. So being over here, to me, just was a little off place. Again, small detail, but I really like what he did when he fixed that. Both of these are real copper. You have a copper neck, copper box, and that is like that again on both of the runs. I know there's a debate whether the Last Jedi was copper versus brass, or an aged brass. I don't know what the difference is. I know that's debated on the RPF as well as other forums and Facebook pages. Roman's decided to go with the copper. I know Lukinov from the RPF, believe Russian manufacturer, is he just had that creepy uncle run that supposedly did very that did very well and sold out. A lot of people seem to be very happy with the quality of his work and the hilts that he put out there. He used brass instead of copper. So again, if you're looking for brass, if you think it was brass, that's something you might want to look for. Otherwise, again, I think this looks pretty close to what we see on screen. And again, I know Roman's a stickler for detail and accuracy, so I'm kind of going along with what he thinks at this point. The one nice thing, again, about the control box, you'll see here. Again, sorry about any glare from my overhead light here. You can see the control box is now one solid piece. So I'll get this going first. So this is the second run. We got one solid piece on the side. The arrows are much larger. Let me get an arrow shot of the Gen 1. So there's a plate here that you can see, and again, it's very reminiscent of Luke's from Return of the Jedi, where it did look like a plate. And the arrows you can see are much, much smaller. So in the Gen 1, you can see here this plate. These screws actually do come out, and there's a very thin line here. So that's a very small arrow plate that Roman had on that first run. And people actually ended up making some changes. There were some people in the RPF that made some additional accessories. I know Paul Tatum was one who ended up making a PCB board for inside the control box to work switches and to have functioning LEDs, as well as making some of those LEDs as well. It does great work, by the way. If you ended up picking up a Gen 1, and I think he even was making some for the Gen 2 and also for Corbin's LS6. I think he even made some for that as well. I don't even know if he's making for the Creepy Uncle, but he might be, as long as he's getting the dimensions. Thought there were some genius ideas that he had. I would definitely say look him up. I think he has stuff going on. He had stuff on the RPF, and I think you can even find them on the Facebook pages. But both hilts came with pretty much the same accessories. So you have these vented pommel caps. Now you can notice here that the Gen 2 is more rounded. Okay, the edge here actually rounds off, where the Gen 1 is a little bit more squared off. So that was one difference on the Pommel Caps. Both come with a tri-ring. Now the tri-ring on the G1, again, very reminiscent of Return of the Jedi, very large. But as you can see here with the Gen 2, this is much smaller. Much smaller. So again, I'm guessing from some of the video and images that we've had since the Blu-ray has come out, again, another adjustment that was made to size down that tri-ring. The other thing that was really nice about this, the machining on this one to me was much better. The Pommel Cubes down here, very smooth. The Gen 1, the Pommel Cubes to me were a little rough. They probably could have been cleaned up a little bit better before they were sent out, but overall the Gen 2, I was very happy when this came in because this had none of that rough feel from that first run. The anodizing on the grip section in here along the rings, this to me is much better than the first time around. First time there was a little bit more chipping that was involved along here, which, I mean, again, it made it kind of weathered it a little bit, I guess. But I like it that this is nice and clean here. There is a difference, which is interesting, is if you can see along the lip, just under the copper weather vane, or wind vane there, you'll see this is still aluminum. This is still bare aluminum. Where on this, it's actually anodized black. Now, I'm guessing from looking at some of those shots, I guess there was the prop collection that was getting put on display at different locations around the country with the different lightsaber hilts. I think if you actually look at that, you can see that that is actually black around the bottom of the wind vane there on that lip. So that was a nice little addition, a nice little change. The Pommel Cubes, well, the drill actually, and the Pommel Cubes are actually in, I think, the correct position now. So you can see here, I didn't install the tri-ring yet, but here's this here. This was actually rotated down a little bit further, almost 90 degrees from the control box. This has been dialed back slightly since the movie has come out, so I think that's probably in the more correct position. And the other nice thing is here is the line, so to get access to the bottom of the pommel here, this comes out, solid static pommel here. But when this is screwed all the way in, the machining on this was done much better because you can barely see the line going around that, which to me is a lot nicer. If you actually look at the first gen here, you can see that line a lot more clearly. Just holding it from this distance, you should be able to see the difference between the two. This to me looks more solid, almost like it's like the pommel's one piece, but here you can clearly see the line going around. So the fact that it was hidden much better second time around, I think Roman definitely ironed out some of those flaws from that first run, and he has made a really great hilt. The last thing that I want to go over, the control box. So the control box on the first gen has just a wire hole here, but nothing for switches. And the card itself lines up very, very flat. So you were going to have to make some adaptations to the card to really shave that down. I mean, you have to do that with most clamp cards anyway to get it to rock really nicely. But there was really hardly any space between where the bottom of the card is and the copper plate. So I think you were going to have to make some really big modifications to this, as well as to drill in through the copper plate so that you could put momentary switch hats in here, or for them to extend up through the copper plate from inside the control box to get that to work. He went ahead and he remedied that again on this Gen 2, putting nice openings in here for some switches. I thought that was great, and the card itself, the way that it sits, there's definitely enough room in here to just do a little modification in order to make it a nice switch rocker to go back and forth for activation and auxiliary. Overall, really enjoyed the changes that he's gone through and made. Obviously, that's why, you know, the first run sold out, did very, very well. No reason why he shouldn't have gone back and made a second, and when he did his due diligence, made the right corrections, and the Gen 2, in my opinion, is definitely a little bit further ahead. I will go back and say that the Gen 1, I think, is still a fantastic hilt. Again, this is something that you can switch between Return of the Jedi and The Last Jedi and TFA. You know, if you're only going to get like one Luke hilt and you want it to be interchangeable for that reason, then that's great. I mean, I know a lot of people with the Graflexes, they buy separate, you know, bottom 3-cell tubes so they can change it around between the films. And all you need really is a couple of accessories, and you can get away with having one Graflex and changing it between the 3 different variations. This is kind of like that. You can pretty much get away with that. I mean, the only thing is the Pommel Cubes themselves don't really rotate to line up appropriately, but that's, again, that's a small detail. If you're switching between those, the blade plugs, I really don't think you're gonna miss having this up in the way anyway. I mean, that really is the worst spot to put the tri-ring, is right up against. So when this is a belt hanger, the control box is hitting into you all day long. So to me, that actually is the worst spot. This was much better to move it over to the side. But yeah, overall, I'm really excited about this. I'm just waiting for Goth to put out a chassis. And when he does, I'm going to pick up the master chassis. Most likely that's what he's going to end up doing. And I will get that installed. I do want to try and do a NeoPixel with this. I think that's going to look great. I'm really looking forward to finally getting this done, because the first gen hilts came in, I think, very early in the year. I want to say like January or February these things finally came in, and we still don't have a chassis yet. I know Goth's busy. I know he's got a lot on his plate. The last time I posted something for him was probably about at least 3 or 4 months ago. He said it was on the list of things to get worked on. Just gotta wait a little bit longer for that. But I am gonna work that in. I am gonna make functioning LED arrows. I know that's not seen on screen, but that's something that I've always loved. I love that about the Return of the Jedi hero, and I'm gonna make that functional in this as well. I mean, and Roman does give you the arrows, and as you can see, the arrows from the first run and second run are 2 totally different sizes. These are very, very tiny. These have stick backs to them to put right on the plate itself. And these themselves, it's very hard to see, but there is a very, very tiny lip on these LEDs to push them through. And probably using some E6000 could stick them right from inside the control box to get them to stay put. Again, if you wanted just a static hilt, these work great as that. Great for that as well. Has a great weight to it with nothing in it. This feels really, really nice. Probably, I don't know, just over a pound, between 1 and 2 pounds probably. But really like the design on this. I'm very happy this is, again, that it's dedicated to The Last Jedi and Force Awakens. Very happy about that, so I can really distinguish this from some of the other Luke heroes that I have. Other than that, it does still twist from the middle. Again, very similar if you did a KR Sabers, or if you've seen those. Okay. And everything else does come off from the emitter. And again, the emitter is screwed in via the heat sink. Okay, so there's the heat sink, there's the threads. This comes through, okay, you can see there, and that's how it threads into the neck. I believe this is how Roman pretty much does his standards for his thin necks. I do not have an Inception, so I can't speak for that, but I do have an MK1, and that's exactly how it was done on that thin neck, as well as, of course, the Gen 1 all that's the same. And of course the copper neck comes off as well, threads. Okay, this was all very, very clean. I like that a lot. I am going to probably try to age this a little bit. When I end up finishing mine, I'll do a little bit of weathering to it. But if I know Roman still has these available, so go to his site. I believe it's romanprops.com, and look for his Balance V4. I probably will be selling and putting up my Gen 1 for sale, so if someone is looking to grab one at a slight discount, I will be putting this up probably this week. It's empty, there are no electronics in this, it's just the empty hilt at this point with all the accessories that came with. I don't need two of these. I'm going to just go with the one that's upgraded. Obviously I'm going to price this appropriately because the Gen 2 is out right now. But again, I still think this is a very good hilt for someone that's looking for a Luke hilt that can interchange between any of the film variations that's out there. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. I really enjoy doing all this stuff. I've got some builds I'm hoping to show off soon enough. I'm about to start the Solo's Hold Ezra Bridger lightsaber, the Rebel Orphan, and that I'm hoping to get done within the next couple of weeks. I go pretty slow. I go at my own pace. These are all builds for me. I'm not doing them for anybody else, so I don't really have, it's not like I have deadlines to meet. When I get to them, I get to them. But I'm looking forward to showing that off. I already love the look of it just as static, so I can't wait to put electronics in that. I think that's going to look fantastic. Alright, guys, any questions, comments, anything like that you want to say, put it down at the bottom. I will do my best to get back in a reasonable time, and hope everyone enjoys their weekend. Alright, take care, guys. Bye.